For decades, the world's superpowers have stood against each other in a perilous gridlock that unceasingly threatens the planet with the possibility of a nuclear war. Even so, brief but potentially cataclysmic lapses of reason have emboldened military units to occasionally clash against each other in aggressive maneuvers that could dangerously escalate if the situations are not immediately defused. On Thursday, January 9, 2020, the American destroyer USS Farragut was aggressively confronted by an initially unidentified Russian vessel while conducting routine operations in the North Arabian Sea. The approach, which was caught on camera, was deliberate and reckless, and the crew on board the American ship felt immediately threatened by the Russian maneuver. As Navy officials assessed the situation, the hostile Russian ship continued to draw ever closer with increasing speed, putting both vessels at risk of collision. The U.S. destroyer continually signaled the aggressive vessel to change course, but the Russians did not seem to comply. The American seamen prepared for the worst as they kept on sending signals. If all efforts failed, they would have to fire upon the Russian vessel, even if it meant risking a global conflict of unparalleled reach and scale. Testing the waters. Incidents in which Russian ships have suddenly approached U.S. vessels aggressively have drastically grown over the past years. In mid-2019, a Russian ship recklessly charged at USS Chancellorsville while she operated in the Philippine Sea. The aggressive ship dashed full speed ahead in what seemed like a collision trajectory, only stopping when she was just 50 feet away from the American vessel and her crew. Navy servicemen are trained to remain calm and with their heads cold, even in the direst circumstances. But according to a U.S. 7th Fleet spokesman, Chancellorsville was forced to, quote, execute all engines back full and to maneuver to avoid collision. The Russian crew had just risked an armed encounter of global proportions. After the tense occurrence, Russian media declared that the American ship had crossed the path of the Russian vessel, and that her crew had no intention of provoking or participating in a conflict. But as increasingly more events with similar characteristics seem to take place around the globe, the U.S. military is confident that the aggressive behavior is part of a Russian strategy to test the response capabilities of the American forces operating in international territory. 7 months after the Chancellorsville closely avoided the collision, another Russian vessel showed the same aggressive and erratic behavior when she violently dashed against USS Farragut as she conducted routine operations in the North Arabian Sea. Massive risk. Military warships are massive and voluminous metal superstructures that require strict and methodical procedures to move according to plan. The crew of such ships must always be aware of their surroundings and any nearby boat, as even the slimmest miscalculation could lead to catastrophe. Furthermore, once a large warship is already cruising at high speed, stopping or diverting her course can be a complex and demanding task that cannot be accomplished immediately. As such, having a sizable unidentified vessel approaching aggressively is a dangerous and potentially calamitous provocation. The U.S. Navy takes such occurrences very seriously. Even in the best of cases, they can risk the sailors' integrity, and in the worst of circumstances, they can lead to a devastating fire exchange against foreign forces or lethal collisions. Even when crashes occur at slower speeds, the consequences can be lethal for those involved, as a recent incident in Singapore clearly showed. In 2017, as 2 U.S. vessels were passing through the Singapore Strait, U.S. guided missile destroyer USS John S. McCain suddenly made a sharp, unexpected turn. The warship abruptly came into the path of a large American tanker, leading to a devastating collision that could not be prevented even when the tanker attempted to halt her advance. The unfortunate incident cost the lives of 10 U.S. sailors and considerable damage to both vessels. No ill intent was found after an investigation, but the perilous affair showcased how dangerous ship collisions can be and why U.S. Navy crew members must always be on high alert to prevent such disasters. However, When a foreign force intentionally drives a massive ship into a U.S. vessel with the intention to intimidate, the stakes grow exponentially, and the possibility of the incident devolving into an all-out battle becomes much more immediate. The Standoff. USS Farragut is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer that has served in the waters surrounding the Middle East for almost a decade, mainly operating in the Gulf of Oman, the Gulf of Aden and Somali Basin, and the Arabian Sea. For years, Farragut served as the flagship of CTF 151. She was responsible for providing maritime security for friendly vessels against piracy and securing freedom of navigation in the region. As such, the destroyer and her crew had plenty of experience navigating the waters of the Arabian Sea. With such experience under their belt, it immediately became clear to the Farragut's crew that something was wrong when a Russian spy ship began approaching their position aggressively and without attempting to communicate their intentions. The event was so peculiar to some American sailors that they decided to record it, offering the world a rare glimpse of the dramatic and tense situation about to unfold. The footage. In the footage, the Russian ship can be seen approaching rapidly at Farragut from behind. The aggressive move was surprising for the U.S. sailors, but they expected the foreign vessel to change course at any moment. Still defying all accords, the aggressive ship continued to dash toward the American destroyer in an apparent collision course. The commander in charge of the U.S. vessel then ordered the crew to sound 5 short blasts, the international maritime signal for the danger of collision. However, the Russian ship ignored the signals and rushed directly toward the U.S. destroyer. Farragut then communicated with the Russian vessel and demanded they alter their course under the international rules of the road. Even so, the spy ship continued with her aggressive approach, disregarding the requests for a course change. The tension was unbearable, and some American crew members feared the worst as the opposing ship refused to comply with international law. The hostile vessel was now only 60 yards from USS Farragut, a hazardous distance for warships moving at high speed. The following few seconds would be crucial. A devastating crash would likely happen if the Russian ship continued her trajectory. The U.S. destroyer's commander had to consider every possible action to avoid that, including engaging the spy ship to force her to stop. Fortunately for everyone involved, the Russian ship finally complied and moved away from the U.S. destroyer at the last second, after which she went in a different direction. The affair was highly stressful and risky, and it could have devolved into an international confrontation between the two superpowers. At the end of the day, a catastrophe was averted. Even so, U.S. Navy officials described the Russian actions as irresponsible and unprofessional, stating, quote, "The initial delay in complying with international rules while it was making an aggressive approach increased the risk of collision. The U.S. Navy continues to remain vigilant and is trained to act in a professional manner." Thank you for watching Dark Footage. If you enjoyed our video, don't hesitate to click on your screen and explore more of our other Dark Documentaries channels, where we delve into some of the most intense conflicts in modern history and unveil the fantastic technology that made a difference in the heat of battle. Also, hit the bell icon to be notified of our newest content, and stay tuned for more.